Welcome, Penny.
Kaytee.
I'm so happy to be doing this proper interview with you. And
a very serious interview, very serious.
Yes, very serious. And having a chance for folks to get to know you. I want to start with my first question when I met you, which is, what in the world is a functional or a longevity zoologist and a cognitive ethologist? What does that mean? What do you do?
That means I can win every Scrabble game and every game of Hangman on the planet with these crazy words. So, okay. So I started out as a cognitive ethologist, and that is realistically the study of intelligent animal behavior. So we're talking about, so ethology is animal behavior, and cognitive, I'm looking at what's really going on in the prefrontal cortex of the animal's mind. So really I studied sensory neuroscience, so the 5 modalities that we're familiar with, plus whatever additional ones certain animals have, like bats and dolphins have the echolocation. Migratory birds have the ability to navigate along the lines of the magnetic fields of the earth, so they have different sensors and things for that. Certain diving mammals have amazing sensors for their depth control and their breath work and things like that. So there's additional kind of things going on in the physiology and the neuroscience of the animals. And that just fascinated me, because I wanted to know what their world was like. I wanted to know what their experiences of life were, what they valued, what they liked, how they made decisions, not just what decisions they made, but like how, like what was the ranking of that process. And I wanted to take all of that and apply it to their welfare. So it's really common in animal behavior studies for people to focus on, well, let's understand the animal so we can understand the human better. And I always thought that was really rude, actually. Like it's saying to the animals, you're just like our guinea pig to figure us out. And I'm just like, no, you've got all the self-worth, all the intrinsic value, all of the interesting, fascinating aspects to you. I don't need to like go figure out human stuff. I can just talk to a human to figure that out. Right? So I wanted to understand the welfare, how I could improve their experiences, how can I improve their life, enrich it, make it interesting, dynamic, joyful, rewarding, fun, and all that kind of thing. So it was very, very applied science. So that's the cognitive ethology stuff. And then when I was working with the zoos in the animals in the zoos, and on their mental health and on their behavioral things, and how to really enhance the human animal bond, because this is a really big part of being in the captive environment, whether you're in a zoo or whether you're a pet at home, the human in your life, so your keeper, your trainer, your curator, or your pet parents and your family and your pack, this is the number one most important part of your day for most of those animals. And so the intensity of the bond, the strength of the bond, the value, the trust of the bond, the two-way, that was just, paramount for me. So that's a study called anthrozoology. So I specialized in some of that as well at university, as well as the neuroscience and the other things there. So when you get to have the privilege of working up close with animals like that, you start to see, oh, there's more I could do. I could understand this. I could go down this rabbit hole and learn like the tiniest little details of like one particular species. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to specialize in carnivores. So mammalian carnivores, they're my people. They're my family. They're my favorite. I love them. And again, mostly in cognitive ethology, the emphasis is on primates because of that connection to wanting to understand the human. So I was like out of left field in every possible way you could think of. And then I was like, yeah, no, and I'm going to do carnivores too. And they're like, no one does carnivores. I was like, yeah, watch me. So working with them, and then realizing that sometimes you cannot solve the behavioral issue or the psychological problem or the deep trauma, or just get the behavioral results, so that you've got a joyful animal instead of a stressed animal, if you don't also look at the other side of the coin. And I've done all of my work and research looking at the mental health side of the coin, and I hadn't looked at physiology, the physical health. And I realized, thanks actually in large part to Carolyn Ingram, who alerted me to this oversight that I was, kind of had missed, that the health was actually as important and sometimes was the key to unlocking what comes to on the other side. So I looked at that and I thought, yeah, okay, that's great. I don't want to be a vet. And I had decided that when I was 5, I decided that again when I was 6, I decided that again when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? I just knew I'm not called to be a vet, right? So I thought, how on earth am I going to do health? How am I going to understand healing of animals without doing that? And so that opened up the can of worms, and so I started getting into, well, what actually works? What are my wild animals doing? What did animals used to do before there were vets and drugs? How does how does the immune system heal itself? What actually also heals the body? Is there anything else that does? And it's, and literally 5 years later of going down every possible avenue I could think of and find, with cross-pollinated reading and all the rest of it, and going into the academia and looking at the papers, talking to the experts, studying under some of the greatest people on the planet in this field, realized that regenerative and functional medicine offered, for my value system of wanting things that were safe, effective, kind, cooperative, and natural, the best answers to how we do animal health. And so therefore, this whole thing of true healing and true regeneration of the body, optimization of the body, fullness of joy, abundant life, all these kind of phrases and things came out. And so, but that's an awfully long sentence to say to someone. So, and because I hadn't specialized in a particular disease or in pharmacology or something, and I hadn't become a vet, coming up with a word that kind of encapsulated the whole thing was the longevity zoologist. And so I study animals. That's what I know. That's what I understand. And I'm studying them to improve their mental health and their welfare and their behavior and their quality of life and bonds with humans. And I'm improving their quality and quantity of life and their health, so that they can optimize all of that living space without a decline in welfare and disease. So very long answer to your question, but that's really what it is. And that's where it came about. And that's why they're together. And that's why it's a great big long name, because it's really trying to say, if there's anything to do with welfare and the quality of life and the joy that an animal feels, then come, talk to me, because I've studied it. And that's my number one in life.
It's really interesting that you're kind of like, you're taking a mind-body approach to animal health and wellness. What was it like going back before you started studying all of this? You mentioned when you were 5, you already knew. Was there anything in particular, like you just knew? Did something happen? Like it seems like at your core, like literally at your core, this is who you are. This is your calling. This is your purpose. Have you ever had any doubts about it? Like what is that like to feel that so strongly and so deeply?
It's very anchoring. It's very, I've never felt lost, because I always knew what I'm here for. I've always known the size of my heart for the animals, and that if I didn't have a day where I did something for them, I felt like half a person. I felt like I was vanishing into mist or something. It was just, I'm just so, I don't know, I don't have language to explain this, but it is like, if you cut me, I bleed animals. Like it's just in every essence of who I am, right? And so I had been to the zoo before I was 5, and I had animals around me, and in fact they're my earliest memories rather than my family. Sorry, mum and dad. But I remember this day going to the zoo. It was with my school. I was 5. It was the first year that you were at school, and we all went together. And they'd taken us around and we looked at various things and we had to answer various questions, and it was a school trip, so there was learning. But I remember standing in front of the seal enclosure, and for the first time in my life, I saw someone walk into the enclosure. They opened the gate and they walked into the enclosure where the animals were without any barriers whatsoever. And from up until that point, I'd never known that that was even possible, that you could go into a zoo enclosure. Like, I would have lived in one my entire life if I had the chance, right? But I didn't know that that was even possible. She walked in, she had the white welly boots on, she had a bucket in her hand and with all the fish in it. And the seals were so happy to see her. They were so happy to see her. And they came leaping out of the ponds and the pools and the rock pools and all the things and slithering up on the side. And then they looked up at her expectantly, like she was their best friend. And I thought, there is nothing greater in this world than to be the friend of seals and sea lions. Like, this is the pinnacle of existence. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a friend to seals and sea lions, and I'm going to give them presents. I'm going to give them their favorite food. We're going to play. It's going to be amazing. They're going to be happy. I'm going to be ecstatic. And what could be more perfect in life? So that was my moment, and that was it. Done.
I feel like seals have come up before. Is this in your like logo? Is it a seal? Am I making that up?
You're making it up a little bit. It's a polar bear. So the polar bear is the biggest of the carnivores, the mammalian carnivores. So it's a little tiny weasel all the way up to the polar bear. And so there's no taxonomic grouping that has such a divergence of size in their pool. Actually, maybe marine mammals would have to count because the whales are pretty big. But there's a question whether or not they count as carnivores anyway. They're just marine carnivores rather than terrestrials. So they're kind of mine still.
So what do you do with all of this now? Having that, it's a very specialized background. You really paved your own way. Like, this wasn't just I say just, but it wasn't like a structured, organized, set path. You knew what you wanted to do, and you sought that out, and you created that to do what you want to do. So what does that look like now in terms of how you apply that? I mean, obviously this summit, education, I know you're such a good teacher. You're such a good teacher. I know you've taught me so much and really helped me and my fur babies' health journeys. So thank you for that. That's a whole nother conversation. I could rave about all of that. But what is it that you do? How do you put all of that together?
That's a big question. I did always know what I wanted, and it wasn't an easy pathway to take. You know, I think I was. I mean, I knew I was going to university to study zoology when I was 5 years old. I knew it, and that was my pathway all the way through. I was like, hurry up, primary school! You're not teaching me about animals. Come on, you know, and. And so then I got there and I realized that the pathway wasn't going to be clear, and so I took a lot of extracurricular stuff. I took veterinary classes. I took all my neuroscience stuff in the medical faculty. I took all of my animal welfare and anthrozoology stuff from the farming and agricultural side of the campus. I did the neuroscience, I did the animal behavior, the genetics, and other bits within the zoology department, the physiology, the anatomy, the cell bio. Like, it's just, and I had to cobble it all together because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't even have the name of cognitive ethologist at that point. I didn't know what its name was. I just knew that there was this thing out there that I wanted so badly I could taste it, and nothing was going to stop me. And then eventually I started to find people like Mark Beckhoff, who is a fantastic professor of cognitive ethology in Colorado. And I reached out to him, and he very graciously supported me and gave me some information. And I was like, oh my gosh, I found my thing. This is what I'm going to do. But then it's like, oh, okay, who rings up and says, oh, I need a cognitive ethologist, quick. Right? No one. You know you need a dentist, you know you need an accountant or a gardener or a travel agent, or, you know, but you don't suddenly go, oh yeah, I tell you what I really need in life, you know, that's a longevity zoologist, or yeah, a cognitive ethologist, that's the person I need. So I had to figure out, where do I even go? And the answer was academia. That's where they all live. They all live in academia. And I looked at that and I thought, well, do I go and get my PhD, and do I study all these things and then write papers and never see an animal face to whiskers? Like, when do I get to have that FaceTime with them? When do I get to see their life transformed in front of my eyes with that work? When do I get to have that friendship like that girl zookeeper had with the sea lions? Like, I was like, if I sit in academia, that's not going to happen. So that was like, no way, I can't do that. It's not the right pathway. I just knew, again, I knew I wasn't meant to be a vet. I wasn't meant to be an academic. So where do you go?
You're too fashionable to be an academic.
Don't tell the people.
I've seen some of your shoes. You can't wear those in a lab. Come on.
No, you really can't, because they're open toe and you, like, you get scolded, and then, yeah, I know all the things. So there really wasn't any other pathway for me except to get my hands and feet very grubby in the zoo. And so I pulled on the wellies and I pulled on the fleeces and the khaki shorts and the whole thing. And I zookeepered, and I mucked out things, and I carried manure piles, and I lifted hay bales, and I washed elephants, and I, refreshed otter latrines, and I held on to stinky fish, and I trained sea lions, and I was, you can't get the smell of fish off you for days. I made little meatballs for the lions. It's I had to do some pretty grim things in the zoo, right? But that was my privilege. It was my privilege to do all of those things, because that got me in front of my friends, and then I could sit and watch my friends, and then they could teach me who they were. They could teach me what they valued, because I would just sit there, and I have got, to this day, I still have pages and pages of my dry, raw notes of like ethograms and stuff, that I would sit in front of the enclosures for 8 hours, 8 hours, right? With my paperwork and my clipboard, and every 15 seconds across 8 hours, I would mark down what is the animal doing. So I had the ethogram, that's a list of all the classic behaviors that particular species is known to do. And every 15 seconds, you mark down, and you just basically tick, that's what they're doing. Then you got all that statistical information. You can work out a data spread of what it is that they're doing, what's their activity budget, and all that kind of thing. And so that starts to give you clues. What are they doing? What are they doing with their time? What do they value? So I got to learn who they were. I got to know them. And the more you do that, the more you realize, it's common sense. All animals move towards the things that they love. All animals disappear and move away from the things that they don't love. So when it comes to welfare science, when it comes to looking after animals in a zoo, or whether you're looking after your pets, it's just so easy. Just lead with your heart. If you do kindness, it works. And I was like, why isn't it that simple for everyone else? Why can't they see it and understand it? So now, so I was a zoo consultant for a while, and I went and solved problems, and it's like, okay, these guys aren't breeding. We need to solve the problem. What's wrong with their behavior? Okay, these guys are upset and depressed, and what's going on? And can we change their enclosure, or do we change their diet? Do we look? So I got a really nice spread of enclosure design things, health things, nutrition things, behavior things, working with the zoo vets, working with the keepers and the curators, working with people in the dog industry and everything else, to really understand the full spectrum of stuff. And so that's now what I can bring to any situation with any of my carnivores, whether they're in the zoo or whether it's dogs and cats. And the biology of healing is the same. And that's obviously what you and I've been talking about all the way through this summit, that the biology of healing and the biology of being optimized and vital and thriving is the same. So it doesn't matter if it's a dog, or if it's a domestic cat, or if it's a puma, or if it's there are going to be things that you tweak, but that's the fun of just finding out. You dig into the science and you work out, who's researched red pandas to the nth degree. So I try and make friends with the top scientists in these various taxonomic groups to understand, okay, so when it's a red panda patient in front of me, okay, I know that that's what they need more than they need that, because their value system is this and their biology is tweaked a little differently like that. But so much of it is the same across the board. And so it's just make friends with the animal, learn from the animal, observe, let them tell you what the answers are, and then you're just there to provide. Let me offer you this. Does that work for you? Let me offer you that. Does that work for you? Are you stressed? Let me help you learn a thing so that you don't have to be stressed and you can cope with that, and then you relax again. And so having both sides of the coin now means that the bases get covered.
You really are a very heart-centered person. I think that was one of the first things that struck me when we met, was you were just like, you're always wanting to like give and share and support. And so it makes so much sense to me that that's literally what you do, but for animals, because you do that with humans too. Like obviously right now you're really focusing on pets, and a lot of it is virtual. So you're not actually with the animal. You can't necessarily read the body language and do what you would do hands-on in the zoo. And I think it's pretty amazing that your skills translate to humans, because I don't like you can support pet parents in supporting their animals. And I think that's a really unique skill set. And I'm honestly like, I'm really impressed that you have both. And I mean, I'm a big fan of yours, so I'm just over here like, singing all the praises, but really, I think that it's a really important aspect to have, because you're impacting, you're now able to impact so many people, really, no matter where they are in the world. I mean, I'm in Virginia, you're in, the UK, like it's crazy. And I'm sure you have clients all over the place. So what does that look like for you now in your work, doing more of the coaching for the pet parents?
Yeah, so with obviously lockdown and things like that, zoos just took a pretty big hit because they, so I was like, let me bring this into a realm where it isn't being talked about very much. Not that it's being talked about that much in the zoo industry either, but let me take this into the pet side of things. And I experienced that firsthand when I started being told, like, there's nothing else you can do. That's just normal, that they're expected to get this disease. Take this drug. And I'm like, will it cure? No. Will it alleviate? Well, for a bit, and then we'll have to up the dose. And I was just like, I can't accept that any of these are good enough answers. They might be the standard answer, they might be what you've been taught to say, might be where science is at as far as you're concerned, but they're not good enough for what I believe the animals are worth. They're worth giving every scrap of hope and possible option to. So I was like, let me jump over here into domestic. They're still carnivores, right? The biology of the digestive system and the sharp teeth and all the things, right? They're still in the same group of animals that I've always loved and looked after. It just means that they're creating the bonds and that friendship with them is a whole lot easier, because they're not, already a bit suspicious of you or thinking, oh, I don't know about you. So it's the same. It's the person involved, as the pet parent or as the keeper or whatever, is the responsible decision maker for the animal. And until the responsible decision maker for the animal has enough facts, then they're going to make a decision that may not be the best one, because they're only working on having, I don't know, let's say 40% of the knowledge. So with 40% of the knowledge, you can make a good decision. But with 85% of the knowledge, you can make a better decision. And that information was missing. And I thought, I know this information. It took me many years to figure it out, to go down lots of pathways and then reject them and say, that's not good enough for my animals. This one isn't science enough. It's not backed with enough evidence. I can't repeat that experiment, or we can't get the data set to, So I don't expect that the vast majority of pet parents are going to take all those years to delve into all those papers and read all of that research and then try and synthesize a model and put together a system. So I was like, well, clearly I've done it. Clearly I care. Clearly I should be the one to do it. And so transitioning and bringing that across into the pet parent world was a no-brainer. And it's been so gratefully received. Like, it really surprised me, because I think I went in imagining that, well, dogs and cats are so simple and so easy compared to my wild animals, of course people would know the things. Of course people would know the things, right? And unfortunately, I was very mistaken. And many, many people don't. Now, I'm pleased to say that as time has gone on, many, many more people do. And there's a massive trend that we're moving into of greater awareness of what's right for our animals and what doesn't actually work. And actually, that's really poisonous. We should avoid that. So that trend is just helping me get that message out further, because there's more pairs of ears that are willing to hear. I think every single animal would be willing to let me administer care to them, but they don't belong to me, right? They belong in other families. They belong in collections of zoos or something like that. So I always need to have rapport with people and permission from people, and people trusting me and my intentions and my knowledge in order to have that door open. And then once the door is open, it's pretty quick to, to be convinced, if you like. And I'm not there to convince. I don't argue a point, or I have my opinion, and I respect that that not everyone's going to agree with me. That's totally fine. I'm not there to make you change your mind. I'm here to offer information. And then based on that, you can decide what you think is right for you, what you think is right for your animal, what you think is right for your zoo collection. I'm here to provide the information. And if you happen to then see these amazing results that start coming through and you're impressed by that, then probably at that stage you're going to be a little bit more enthusiastic about listening, and then we can go as far as you want to go with that. And that's super exciting for me, because that's a lot more frequent now than it used to be.
It's so interesting that you've never really had the experience of being like an ignorant pet owner. Like you've always known, because you've always studied it. And I'm sure as you went along, you're like, ooh, this extra thing and this extra thing. But like for those of us who never studied any of the things, it's so different. But so it's so interesting that going into this, you were like, oh, but people don't know. And so you really fill the need that you just saw.
First of all, I need to clarify, because I certainly did not know everything, and I certainly do not know everything, right? So let's
but it's qualitatively different to not know everything and be an expert. No expert knows everything, right? And then to be a pet parent where, like, we're not taught these things, right? You've never got, you barely get any personal human health education in school. You definitely don't get any for your pets. And, with the current culture of pet care, it's easy to be misled. And I think most people are.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But I was surprised because I think I got excited by the knowledge that was new to me, because it's new, it's novel. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just learned this incredible thing. So I wanted to talk to people about this, whatever this up here. But people were like, oh my gosh, that down here. And I'm like, that I learned that when I was 6. That's boring. That's really old. Like I've been doing that for,
Yeah.
Let's go over here with this information here, and I was really like, oh, wow, okay, I have to reset the bar completely in my head and restructure the framework that I had built around this, because there's no point just going, look, there's 5 or 6 years worth of, medical and scientific information, go digest it. No, I've got to condense it, synthesize it, integrate it, make it into a system that you can teach in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people are just going to say that's impossible. So right. I have done all of that. I had to sort of rejig that, because it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I've left out a whole lot of stuff down here that I just assumed was common knowledge, and that's not common knowledge. So that's all had to be taken back and put back into this framework. And so that framework then pads out further, because but people were just blown away, and I was like, I was really surprised. And I guess that's all I really have to say about that, because it just was a paradigm shift for me. I'd been in another headspace, another world, another way of looking at things for so long that, the proverbial black sheep, that I'd forgotten that I was a black sheep, and that
No, you're not a black sheep, you're a nerd, and that's why we connect so. Because we're both nerds. It's almost like 2 different tiers. It's like the first tier is like your foundational knowledge, but you are on like tier 2 or 3 because you have that much knowledge and education and expertise, or you could go to tier 3. But for a lot of the people that you're supporting, it's, let's start at tier 1. Let's start with filtered water. Let's start with species appropriate nutrition. Let's start with movement outside, right? Let's start with these basic things. You could speak to that way better than me, but then, then you have more of the biohacking and the supplementation and the different, therapies that are just so cool. But you have to meet people where they're at. And a lot of people are at tier 1, but I will say I feel like I'm just your perfect audience because I'm like the most passionate pet parent too. As you know, a more lower level, I would say, you know, we started when you first talked to me, you were like, what the heck, you're not filtering your water? And I'm like, oh my God, why am I not? Like, I do this for myself, right? Like translating that knowledge. But as a tier one, admittedly starting at tier one, I'm really interested in becoming tier three, tier two and tier three. And I think a lot of people are, even people who don't, you know, obviously I have a functional medicine background for humans, so it's kind of different, but I think even folks who don't have that, I mean, when we were talking about doing the summit, we were like, people will do anything for their kids and their pets because their pets are their kids. Like, we will do anything for them. And that's why the summit resonates with so many people. And so again, going back to the point of saying, like, people at tier one want to go to tier three, and you have this unique ability to be able to take them through all the way wherever they're starting, kind of all the way to the top, because of your ability to synthesize and break it down and interpret it. You know, what's the point of having all the knowledge if you can't like bundle it up and give it to the people who need it? And that's what you do. So how do you think about, like, in terms of what you're doing now and in terms of your work? I know you do one-on-ones. Do you want to speak to like anything else you have coming up, or, you know, your support in its different forms?
Yeah, so I think of it now like that song in Sound of Music, where Julie Andrews starts singing and imagines the children can just join in with her, and then they're like, oh wait, what, you don't know do re mi? And so it's like, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. So that's really where I've shaped my, you know, the 8 facets of juvenescence, which is the synthesized version, I would say, is what you're referring to maybe as tier one there. And obviously we've covered a lot of those aspects within the talks. They've kind of woven their way in and out as we've talked to various experts. And that was, to some extent, a starting point of like, how do we structure this summit? Even how do we bring sense to the just sheer volume of information and also misinformation that's out there. Mm-hmm. So I do group coaching and I do one-on-one coaching because people have different needs. Now, people who want to learn fast, group coaching is fantastic because you just accelerate with having a little pod around you, a little, you know, some study buddies and community in that sense. So people who want to move fast through something, group coaching is amazing. If you are someone who really wants a lot of hand-holding as you go through that process because you're uncertain about what to do, or you just like that high level of 5-star care kind of thing, you know, that concierged approach, then obviously I've got one-on-one coaching as well. And so, and the coaching forms there's a teaching component in there, because if you don't understand why you're doing a thing, most people won't do it. It needs to make sense first. It needs to resonate and connect. And then once that connects, it becomes a lot easier to remember, but it also becomes meaningful then. And so from that point, then you can say, okay, so now that that's landed, do you want to go in this direction, or that direction? Because these are the options within that space now. But if you can't hold on to that first anchor point, right, then everything else just sounds like white noise, like it's just too much information and overwhelming. Like, how do I know which is the right one? I don't even know why this is important. So understanding that is always the first step. And then there is that second tier, if you like, of more the you know, an athlete, a really high top level athlete, or an opera singer, or someone who is using their body as part of their career and their performance and their top level, you know, these people have different demands of their gym instructor and their nutritionist and their voice coach and stuff like that than an amateur or just someone who's interested. Okay, so that's where tier one is, just like the interested amateur, the committed, and that kind of thing. But tier two is really taking it to that next level. And so there are, you know, plenty of different types of dogs who are having career pathways that are their equivalent of, you know, a top level athlete. You know, these are the search and rescue dogs that are going in after disasters and things and finding people. You know, they've got to be highly trained. They've got to be incredibly fit. They've got to have the stamina, and they've got to have the emotional resilience to cope with being in an environment that's covered in stress and noise and distraction and people's emotions and shouting and fear permeating, and still operate and work. These are really high spec animals, and there's actually more of those in the world than perhaps most people realize. And so being able to train a dog typically takes several years. They've got to be bred the right way and then trained the right way, and then they've got to graduate to meet the standards of the program that they're being asked to run in. And then they may have a working life of 5 years, but that's a super expensive project, and 5 years is not very long. So if we can biohack them, if we can optimize their health, if we can really boost their performance on a cellular level, on a health and regenerative level, increase that longevity, now they've got a working life of maybe 8 years. That's that's almost a double difference. Like, that's a big chunk up more. So that's making it a whole lot more cost effective for the organization and the trainers. And it's allowing the dogs to have full satisfaction, because dogs really, most animals truly really love to have a job. That's one of the biggest problems in the captive environment. And you'll see it with destruction in the home when pets are left and they've got nothing to do, because they're used to being occupied all day long, investigating, solving problems, being social, getting on with survival, finding food for the day, fixing the nest that got broken, whatever. They're busy. And so without a job, they become bored and destructive, and that can either become aggressive, destructive type of thing, or it become self-destructive, and they can do things like self-mutilation, and they pull their fur out, or they bite their paws off, or they do horrendous things because they're just looking for some kind of stimulation. Obviously, those are extreme examples. But when working dogs retire, they go through a bit of a emotional and whatever crises. And there are so many experiments that we've looked in animal behavior where we've proven there's this thing called contra freeloading, where an animal would prefer to work hard for their food reward or some other meaningful prize than just to get it. So you hear me all the time talking about treasure hunting, the food for dogs and the cats in the garden. More dogs than cats, but treasure hunting or scatter feeding or whatever you want to call it, they're working for their food and they love that. Having it just presented in the bowl for them is boring. It's easy. It takes less than 5 minutes to have a meal, whereas in the wild, a meal would take like ages and hours, because you've got to find it, you got to track it, you got to chase it, you got to cooperatively get it if you're a dog, you've got to strategize it if you're a cat, you've then got to be successful on that, and then you've got to work out how you open it up and eat it. And I won't say gross words right now, but it's a long process of time and imagination and all the rest of it. A bowl, oh, it's gone now. Okay, I'm bored. What do I do? So allowing animals to have a job, either by extending their ability to be able to keep performing, or in other ways that I've touched upon, it is just such a welfare enrichment for them that I don't even know what the question was anymore. I feel like I've just gone off and talked about animals, which is what I love to do. So if there was a point to that, please remind me.
No, we were just talking about the different tiers, and you're saying that like tier 2 is more focused and like a more in depth, right? More intense support almost.
Exactly. So I mean, it's obviously not restricted to those niche animals with those particular jobs or anything like that. It can be for absolutely any animal. But we're just talking about taking, someone who loves their sport to the next level of being a highly paid professional athlete kind of thing. And so we'd be looking at things like stem cell therapy and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and red light therapy and, really thorough detoxification programs, high level supplementation that you wouldn't necessarily have on a regular basis, but you would use when you need to optimize. You might look at ozone therapy. There's a whole lot of like pulsed electromagnetic field stuff. There's loads of things, but it's not as simple as, okay, I'll go buy a water filter or I'll get some raw food. Right. There's a little bit more maybe technical understanding. There's maybe a little bit more financial investment. But they're not necessarily either, so it's not a shut and closed off exclusive world where most people can't go. It's just most people have no idea this world even exists for humans, let alone that this world exists for animals, and that in actual fact, every single one of those modalities I just talked about are natural and available to the animal in the natural environment. It's just that they live typically in such a built up humanized environment now that their access to that is so decreased that their bodies are screaming out for that kind of access to get back to that place of, I mean, you look at any wildlife documentary and you see these animals are in peak condition. They are prime, they are muscular, they are accomplished, they're powerful. Yeah, there's a reason because they're doing what they're supposed to do and living how they're supposed to live, and so therefore they are fantastic. It's awe-inspiring.
We can cut this out, but I'm curious if you want to talk about what you have coming up, what we have coming up. I don't know. We didn't plan this, so we can cut this, but it feels like a relevant time to talk about it. If you want to.
You're talking about our 6 month? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being really cryptic here. Yeah, let's do that, because we can decide to keep it or not, as the case may be. But I am really excited about it, genuinely, because this has never been offered before that I have ever heard of. And I've really spent some time walking around in these fields trying to get my bearings and understand it all. And I've never seen anyone offer this. So a 6 month hand-holding, in-depth, small group coaching program with a human functional medicine expert and an animal functional medicine expert, yay, together, taking people through on a journey, an accelerated journey. It's not 5 or 6 years of study. It's 6 months of, let's meet every week. Let's be really super accountable and super connected and super invested in each other, so that the whole process becomes one of almost like a best friendship, mentoring kind of a thing. And we can take you and your pet through all the stages to build up a longevity lifestyle. And once you know how to do it, it's there for you for life. It's there for your human family for life. You don't have to relearn it for each individual person in the family. It's a set of principles that cover every aspect of the biology. And it's there for you for your life, for this pet, your next pet, or your future pets to come. And you've got 2 expert voices in the room to teach, to show the way, to coach through any trouble spots and sticky challenges, or, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not sure, I don't even know, help me, can you just tell me what to do here, versus teach me this bit here. Like, it doesn't matter which way you want to go, we're there, and you've got the group in there with you. And so this can accelerate that entire process from tier 1 up to tier 2 if you want to go that far, or just get really super accomplished with tier 1 and just do something that will be life-changing for you and the family that live under your roof. Because it hopefully by now, from listening to the summit, people realize that this works. We're not making this up. We've got rooms full of experts who are saying the same thing. It's just no one's packaged it in this way where they can learn what's right for them and what's right for their pets, and do it super fast. And it's not expensive to make some of these swaps. It's like, don't buy that detergent, buy this detergent. Well, it's probably going to cost you, like, I don't know, 20 cents more or something, right? I mean, we're not talking about huge investment in the upfront, but what you're getting as a payoff down the line is an extra 5 years of health, or a dog that doesn't get cancer. It's the 1 in the 2 that survives, rather than so can you put a price on that? Like, if someone said to me, can you just give, like, I don't know, let's make up a number, let's give me $2,000, and if you put $2,000 on the table right now, your dog won't get cancer. Is that worth it to you? Oh my gosh, yes, that's worth it to me, right? I mean, that's not what we're talking about in terms of, but I mean, getting that kind of a diagnosis, finding out that kind of information, knowing that your pet's got to have a years of suffering or a whole bunch of pain, and you feel relatively powerless, like, there's nothing worse. Like, you would literally cut your arms and legs off if you could, if you thought that would save them. So having the knowledge of what you can do, that goes far beyond what most standard veterinary care can offer. And then that's applicable to everyone in your family. Like, it's just, I think it's amazing.
I know, I can't stop smiling while you're talking, because it is really unique, and I think it's what we both wished we had had at one point or another.
Oh my gosh, yeah, exactly.
It's really, I feel like it's really that first, like, foundational step And then to your point, from there, you have kind of the next tier up. I mean, obviously I could talk about that on the human side. What does that look like? But essentially, to your point, it's a longevity lifestyle for everyone in your home. And that's really powerful. And having that support is, there's nothing like it. I mean, I'm always like messaging you like, hey, Penny, so Peanut's doing this thing. And like, that's amazing. Like, I totally take advantage of you, and my apologies, but I probably won't stop because like I've seen how I call them the kids, how my kids have how their health has improved. But yeah, okay, I'm glad we shared that, because we've been keeping that under wraps and not really sure when is the right time to share it with everyone. And this feels right to share it in this way, because it is so close to our hearts. And just like with the summit, our goal is and continues to be empower people with knowledge and support.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the support is really key, because you can attend a summit and get all this great information. You can attend university and go and study all the things. But when you step out and try and do it, and the first question hits you, and like, I don't have the answers to that can be a brick wall that stops you dead in your tracks.
Yeah.
And how do you get any positive result then? So having someone that you can, like you're saying, you just message me, and I was like, there you go, there's a reply. But giving more people that simultaneously, and then not just that with me, and not just that with you serving them, but they're all serving each other as well. Is just, there's no better model really, because you never, you might be away from the phone, I might be in a client meeting, I can't answer these things, but someone's there.
Having support in your health journey, even when it's not an expert, like the expert's obviously one type of support, but the type of support of like friends, family, that's a whole nother kind of support.
Yeah, it is.
I work with people all the time who's like, they're trying to make lifestyle changes for themselves, and the people in their home aren't supportive of it, or their partner kind of sabotages it, maybe not, purposefully, but they do. And it makes all the difference when the people that you are closest with are supportive of that journey. And a lot of us, we don't have that kind of support. And when it comes to pets, I think sometimes people who aren't as crazy about their pets kind of diminish that, like, oh my God, it's a dog, it's fine, like, why are you giving them filtered water, right? Like, you hear this kind of stuff, and that's pretty discouraging, and in all of the ways. So to have a community that supports you, no matter where that's coming from, is really, really important. And I feel like that's been happening in the Facebook group too. I love when I go on and it's been a few hours. I'm like, oh no, like, do I need to, does anyone need anything? And someone has asked a question and there's like 10 comments already.
Yeah.
Like, that is so touching and makes me so incredibly happy to see. And I saw someone posted the other day, they were like, I think I found my tribe. I almost cried. Like, I literally just got chills saying that. Like, that's just amazing. And I'm very grateful for this community and really excited to see where it goes next. So anyway, we could talk about this for hours, and we'll continue to talk about it in the future. But on the note of saying, talking about changes you can make now, as we're kind of wrapping this up, is there anything in particular, right? Like, we've asked all of our speakers, all of our experts, is there anything in particular that you want to leave folks with in terms of where they can start from your perspective?
Yeah, loads. I mean, I started making spreadsheets because there were just so many, like, I thought I'll have a top 3. Oh, I can't even do 3. I have a top 3, and then it became a top 5, then it became a top 10, and then, so now it's like a top 50. Because there are just so many things that you can start with that move the needle, that make a difference. And I like to find things that really deliver, not just they cover, this piece here, but they'll cover this and that as well. So I really should come up with some clever name for what I would call these, but they're not silver bullets, because there is no such thing as a silver bullet. Your immune system is the closest thing to your silver bullet, right? If you don't optimize that, you've got nothing. So, but these are products or ideas that just carry so much extra punch than just buying a supplement or something like that. So the filtered water, I always talk about this, but the filtered water is such a big deal because you know, the body itself is this structured water. 70-something% of it is this structured water. That's what and if we even go down in 4% dehydration, we start to really lose brain function and coordination skills and a whole bunch of other things. So hydration is easily overlooked. And by having a water filter, you're immediately going to be improving your internal environment, your internal terrain. You're going to enable everything to flow because everything needs to move. Anything that doesn't move is stagnating and dying, right? If you don't move it, you lose it. If you don't operate, you know, so it absolutely has to happen. So I love hydrogen and structured water because that's the gold standard. Your filtered water is great. It's your starting point. Start there, you know, but if you really want to go to that next level, then structured and hydrogen rich water is just a game changer. And so that's one of my big favorite ones, you know. Humic and fulvic minerals is another one of those things because we're so mineral, every single one of us is so mineral deficient because the soils have been stripped out by intense agricultural farming and not replenished properly. And this, you know, so the soils are mineral low. So then the nutrients in the food are mineral low. And then the animals that eat those are mineral low, and it goes up the food chain, right? And so in the 1970s, an apple had something like 4 times the amount of nutrients in it than it does now. Like I might have slightly made that number up, but it's a significant thing, right? That you think you're eating an apple, you choose making a healthy choice. And it's got to be organic to even be starting to be good, because otherwise it's got all the pesticides and the gunk on it, right? So, and again, that's one of the amazing things with structured water is you can just put your fruit inside structured hydrogen water and it strips all that stuff immediately. And the water goes this browny yellow and you think, oh my gosh, I was actually eating that, right? You don't just sit there and scrub your fruit and veg. You just let it sit there. It pulls all these toxins out of the fruit and or the veg or whatever it is. So it's an amazing thing to have one of those, because it's not just what you drink and what your pet drinks, it's what you bathe in, it's what you wash your face in, it's what you wash your vegetables in, it's what you brush your teeth with. Like this stuff has an effect on everything. Think how much you use water. Anyway, back to the humic and fulvic minerals. So these are super intense, super rich, super natural, and balanced. They're synergistic. They work together rather than taking this mineral supplement and that mineral supplement and that one and that one. And, you know, the humic and fulvic minerals are all in balance together, and they not only replenish your minerals, which allows all your enzymes to do what they're supposed to do and all your function. If you didn't have minerals, you wouldn't be alive for, I don't know, more than 10 seconds. Like it's just that simple. So they're absolutely fundamental, but they also operate as detox. This is why I say I like things that have a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 effect, right? So now they can get inside your cells and not only deliver the minerals and the nourishment to the body where they need it, but they're going to pull out those toxins that we need to get rid of as well. And then they've helped flush them out, and it's all natural. So this is amazing. This is one of my favorite hacks, right? So, and then of course the raw food for carnivores, like there's just no two ways about that, because if you put the wrong fuel into any machine, it's not going to work. So you have to nourish properly. And so, you know, I mean, but there's just 3 examples and I could give you a whole lot, but those have a lot of punch behind them. It's not just, oh, well, I'll take some vitamin C, you know, nothing wrong with vitamin C, love it. But what I just talked about is really kind of next gen.
Mm-hmm. Well, Penny, you've been generous with your time, and I appreciate you personally, professionally, and for everyone else who's listening. I know we have, you know, thousands of people who watch these videos, and I can guarantee that every single one of them has a lot of gratitude for you and what you do and your knowledge. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. Are there any final thoughts, comments that you want to share before we wrap up?
I do have my favorite quote. I can't take credit for this. It wasn't me who invented it, but the easy thing to do in all of this is say, I already knew it, or I don't need this because I already have an answer. And I would ask people to just remember that the greatest barrier to truth is the assumption that you already know it. And if you go around thinking that you know it and you don't open your mind to a new possibility or a new perspective or a new opinion, then you can never grow and learn. And so it's that same thing. If you're not moving and growing, what are you doing? You're retreating and decaying and dying. So for me, learning and expanding here is as important as keeping this moving and using and optimizing, because that way this is alive and this is alive together. But if you say, oh yeah, I already know the things, you know, I don't go around calling myself an expert, but I know some stuff, right? So I know some stuff because I went into that saying, I know all this stuff about animals, but I do not know this stuff here. I just know that there must be an answer. I don't have a problem what the answer is going to be. I don't have a prejudice or preference for what the answer is going to be. I just want to know what the truth is. And that's how I went out on that journey. I was like, I don't care what it is. I have really no agenda, so long as it works, right? I just want to find out what works. And so I had to open my mind to a lot of things. I'm a classically trained scientist, right? I've got skepticism built into me. I've got to see if it's repeatable and testable and peer reviewed and all of that, right? And I had to open my mind to some stuff and go, okay, well, let's find out about this thing that I've never heard of before. Why have I never heard of it before? Because it doesn't fit my model, or because it's not good, or some other reason. And then I was like, wow, there is evidence, there is science, there are studies, this has been proven. Why we're not hearing about it? I don't know. Well, okay, so I'm going to keep that and put that over here with my collection of stuff that I can start sharing with people, because chances are they haven't heard of it either. But if you have, again, I think all of the animals would be happy to accept anything that I offered them, because they don't come with prejudices. But it's the people that I'm working with, it's the pet owners and it's the curators and things. So it always needs to be that human bond first, before there's the animal, the permission or the access to have the animal bond. And until someone is willing to say, okay, show me, prove it, I'm interested, give me some more, let me see what you say, then I can help, I can work, I can do something useful there. But if someone's like, no, I already know what I'm doing, it's fine, I'm cool, thanks, don't worry, then I haven't got an open door, so I have to go somewhere else. So the open mind, the assumption that you don't already have the truth, that you might have it, you might be proven right, but you also might learn something cool along the way, is just key.
Well, beautiful words to end on. And I think that you're speaking to your people when you say that, because I think everyone here is here for a reason.
Yeah.
So I think that message is really going to hit home. All right, Penny. Until next time.
Thanks, Kaytee.
Bye.